The first call rang twice and cut off. The second call went straight to voicemail. The third call didn't even ring at all. By the fourth call, a message told me something no grandfather ever wants to hear about his own grandson. This number is not accepting calls from your number at this time. My name is Emmett Sorensen. I'm 69. Retired locksmith, Omaha, Nebraska. And that automated voice on the fourth call was the first thread I pulled on something that had already been unraveling for weeks, right in front of me, without me ever noticing it. I stood in my kitchen holding the phone a long moment, staring at the screen like it might change what it said if I just looked hard enough. Tyler was 11, my only grandson. We talked most Tuesdays, ever since he was old enough to hold a phone steady, mostly about nothing at all, his school project on volcanoes, some video game he was excited about, the joke he'd heard at recess that he always insisted on telling twice. We hadn't missed a Tuesday in over a year. This was a Tuesday. I called my son, Gary, next, expecting a simple explanation, a broken phone, a forgotten bill, something small and ordinary. "Dad, hey," Gary said, his voice a little too quick, a little too bright. "What's up? I've been trying to reach Tyler all afternoon. His phone says my number's blocked." There was a pause on the line, just half a second too long. "Oh, that's probably just a glitch," Gary said. "Kids and their phones, you know how it is. I'll have him call you later." He didn't sound sure of his own words, and something about that uncertainty settled into my chest like a stone dropping into still water. Tyler didn't call that evening. He didn't call the next day either. I told myself it was nothing. Kids get busy. Phones glitch. But 3 weeks earlier, something else had happened that I hadn't let myself think too hard about until that moment, standing in my kitchen with a blocked number staring back at me. Tyler had called me on a Tuesday like always, and partway through telling me about a science fair project, he'd gone quiet for a second, then said something strange. "Grandpa, is it okay that Dad uses the money you put away for me sometimes? For, like, regular stuff?" I'd laughed it off at the time, told him I was sure his dad was just being careful with things, and changed the subject back to volcanoes. I hadn't thought about it again until right then, standing there with that automated blocked message still glowing on my screen. Because there was money. A modest education fund I'd started for Tyler the year he was born, a little every month, meant to grow quietly until he was old enough for college. Gary had access to manage it, since he was listed as custodian, the same way any responsible parent would be. I hadn't checked that account balance in almost 8 months. I called my old friend Roy that same night, a man who'd spent 30 years working as a bank branch manager before he retired, the kind of friend who always knew exactly which questions actually mattered. "Emmett, you sound rattled," he said. "What's going on?" I told him everything. The blocked number. Tyler's strange comment about the money. The silence since. Roy went quiet on the other end of the line, the kind of quiet that told me whatever he was thinking wasn't good news. "Emmett, if a kid says something like that to you, even in passing, that's usually not nothing. Kids don't make up phrases like regular stuff out of nowhere." That sounds like something he heard, word for word, in his own house. I asked him if he'd help me check the account. He said he would, first thing in the morning. I barely slept that night, lying awake replaying every Tuesday call from the last several months, searching for anything I might have missed, any small detail that had seemed harmless at the time, but didn't feel harmless anymore. Roy called back the next afternoon, and I knew from the weight in his voice before he even said a word that it wasn't good. "Emmett, the account's down considerably from where it should be. Regular withdrawals, going back almost a year. Nothing dramatic in any single month, small enough to maybe not raise flags if nobody was really watching closely." Nobody had been watching closely. That was exactly the problem. I asked him how much. "A little over $14,000, Roy said. "Moved out gradually, into an account that isn't in Tyler's name at all." I sat down hard in my kitchen chair, the same chair I'd sat in for 30 years of coffee and crosswords, and felt something in my chest go cold in a way it hadn't since my wife passed. Roy connected me the next morning with an attorney he trusted, a sharp, careful woman named Vanessa Cho, who specialized in custodial account disputes. She reviewed everything within the hour. "Mr. Sorensen, custodial funds are legally required to be used only for the benefit of the minor they're set up for. If your son's been withdrawing money for unrelated expenses, that's a serious breach, not just a family disagreement. But before we do anything, I want to understand the full picture, including what Tyler actually knows." That was when I told her about the block number. So went quiet for a moment, the same careful quiet Roy had used the night before. Mr. Sorensen, I think your grandson may have said more than your son wanted him to. And I think that's exactly why you can't reach him right now. I felt sick hearing her say it out loud, because some part of me had already known and hadn't wanted to know. Vanessa suggested I not confront Gary directly yet, not until we understood the full extent of what had actually happened, and, more importantly, whether Tyler was truly all right, wherever he currently was in all of this. It was one of the hardest things I've ever agreed to, waiting, when every instinct in me wanted to drive straight to my son's house and demand to see my grandson with my own eyes. Instead, I reached out quietly to Tyler's teacher, Ms. Alvarez, someone I'd met at a school event the year before, someone I trusted to handle things gently. I told her only that I was having trouble reaching my grandson and asked, carefully, if everything seemed all right with him at school. She called me back 2 days later, her voice careful in a way that told me she'd chosen her words with real thought. Mr. Sorensen, Tyler seems fine day to day, but he did mention, a couple weeks ago, that his parents told him not to talk to you about grown-up stuff anymore. I didn't think much of it at the time. Kids say all kinds of things. I asked her if she'd be willing to let me see him briefly at pickup sometime. Somewhere public, nothing secretive, just 5 minutes. She agreed, cautiously, the following Friday. Tyler's face lit up the moment he saw me waiting by the school fence, and for a second, just a second, everything felt normal again. Then his expression shifted, quick and careful, the way a kid's face changes when they remember a rule they're not supposed to break. Grandpa, I'm not supposed to talk to you right now, he said quietly, glancing back toward the pickup line. Dad said, that's okay, buddy. I said, my throat tight. You don't have to talk about anything you don't want to. I just wanted to see your face. He hesitated, then said something in a rush, like he'd been holding it in for weeks and couldn't hold it any longer. I didn't mean to get in trouble, Grandpa. I just asked about the money because I heard Mom and Dad arguing about it, and I didn't understand why they were fighting about my college stuff. He looked terrified the moment the words left his mouth. I told him he hadn't done anything wrong at all, that none of this was his fault, and I meant every word of it. Even as my chest ached watching him glance nervously toward the parking lot the entire time we talked. Vanessa filed the petition the very next morning and sent Gary a formal legal demand, attaching every bank statement Roy and I had gathered. There wasn't much left to argue. The withdrawals, the dates, the destination account, everything was there in black and white. 4 days later, Gary's attorney called Vanessa's office, quietly asking what it would take to resolve the matter before it went any further. She told him plainly, full transparency, full repayment, and no more silence. That evening, Gary showed up at my house alone, late, and stood on my porch a long time before I even opened the door. He wasn't there because he decided, on his own, to come clean out of nowhere. He was there because the evidence in that letter left him no room left to explain any of it away, and he knew it. Dad, he said, his voice already breaking before he finished the word. The evidence speaks for itself. I can't lie my way out of this anymore. I need to tell you everything before you hear it from someone else. I let him in. He sat at my kitchen table, the same one Tyler used to do his homework at during summer visits, and told me everything. The withdrawals had started small, covering a bad month here and there after he'd lost overtime hours at work. Then small had become regular. Then regular had become something he didn't know how to stop or explain. Especially once Tyler started asking questions neither he nor Michelle knew how to answer honestly. Blocking your number wasn't about hurting you, Gary said, staring at his hands. It was about buying time before I figured out how to fix it. I know that doesn't make it okay. It didn't make it okay, but it did make it something I could finally understand, even through the anger still sitting heavy in my chest. Vanessa worked out a resolution over the following month rather than pushing the case to a full criminal referral, giving Gary's voluntary disclosure and immediate cooperation once confronted. Gary agreed to a structured repayment plan for the full amount, with Vanessa's office monitoring the custodial account directly going forward instead of Gary alone. He also agreed, without any pushing from me at all, to family counseling, something Michelle joined as well once the full picture came out. It's been almost a year now. Tyler calls me every Tuesday again, same as always, and this time, nobody blocks the line. Last week, he told me, halfway through a story about his upcoming science fair, that he'd started keeping a little notebook where he wrote down important grown-up things so he wouldn't forget to ask me about them later. I asked him what was in it so far. Just one thing, he said. A reminder to always tell you the truth, even if I think I'll get in trouble. I sat with that for a long moment after we hung up, thinking about how close I'd come to losing something I never once imagined I could lose. A Tuesday phone call, a kid's voice on the other end, the simple, ordinary sound of being wanted. If this story got to you, hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe for more. I'll see you in the next one.